The internet, cyberspace, is an amazingly powerful, captivating place. Undeniably, the way we connect has changed.
Back in the day, we were getting questions from teachers, and they say, you know, along with all this stuff, this bullying that we're talking about here, what about that stuff that kids are doing on email?
I was so concerned and disappointed and overwhelmed by what I saw going on, and I realized no one that cares about the overall well-being of the family and the child was involved in these online networks that kids are participating in.
And that began to spark some interest, and we were looking into that, and we realized that this was something that was beginning. This was something that was beginning to happen.
And I don't want to be part of a society, honestly, where everyone's just stepping on each other to get ahead, to get more views on YouTube, to get more friends on Facebook. You know, that's not the sort of mentality that I really support, and not the sort of culture that will grow to be more mutually beneficial, I think.
If what was going on online was happening in the real world, there would be, you know, people marching. There would be, you know, social change.
As we begin to learn the entire nature of this technological and cultural change, we quickly realized that perhaps we were unprepared, or maybe just naive.
If we wouldn't accept offline behavior, then whoever said we should accept it online?
In middle school or high school, many of us had a run-in with the school bully at one time or another, but at least we knew who the bully was.
They sexually harassed this 13-year-old girl, urging her to strip online. She says the bullies emailed a fake photo showing her face on another person's naked body to dozens of people.
What would you do if your daughter was the target of a vicious internet video?
Most kids are not going to tell their parents, I'm being bullied.
Police in Western Massachusetts are investigating an apparent suicide by a teenage girl and the role cyberbullying may have played.
According to a recent study, only 15% of parents even know about this problem.
By the way, if you're sitting at home right now and you're saying, well, my son or my daughter has never talked about this, don't think that doesn't mean they haven't been the victim of it.
Bullying is an aggressive behavior that one employs to cause harm or stress to others. Occurring in relationships in which there is an imbalance of power, bullying is often recurring and intensifies over time. Cyberbullying has emerged through email, instant messaging, chat rooms, blogs, or through messages and images sent via a cell phone. Experts like Dr. Robin Kowalski help us understand the easily overlooked effect of cyberbullying.
The venue by which cyberbullying is going to occur most frequently is going to be the venue by which they're communicating with each other. So now your social network sites are really creeping up, like MySpace, Facebook, things like that.
And of course, physical bullying can have detrimental effects, but a lot of times those bumps and bruises heal pretty quickly.
Right.
But the emotional bullying can really create baggage that kids, carry with them a long time.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at like depression, anxiety, self-esteem, school absences, physical symptomology, all of those effects are elevated, particularly for kids who are bully victims. So they are both victims and perpetrators of cyberbullying.
Robin goes on to explain the unfair balance of power in cyberbullying. While the traditional bully can cause physical and emotional pain to the victim, cyberbully has more than fists to attack with. Online, the cyberbully can publish degrading messages about the victim, spread digitally altered photos, impersonate their victim, and even assume the victim's identity online and affect their relationships with others. Even though the cyberbully is at a distance from their victim and unable to inflict physical pain, the arsenal of the cyberbully is vast and ever-growing.
Cyberbullying really took on a life of its own, and as we started to study it and get data from students, and not just percentages of how many have been victimized, but also hear about how it's affecting them emotionally and psychologically, and then of course with the growth of technology usage amongst the adolescent population with cell phones and smartphones and the internet and social networking sites, it really was something that we knew that we needed to study because more and more kids were being affected.
How many people in this room have ever been a victim of some sort of internet harassment? Somebody spreading rumors about you, a bad text? Raise your hand.
When kids are bullied or harassed or mistreated or threatened or embarrassed or humiliated using the internet and computers and cell phones, they tend to struggle. They tend to struggle emotionally, they tend to struggle psychologically, academically, with behavioral problems, and so we as a society need to step up.
Shayla, like many of her classmates, is a victim of cyberbullying. Though she doesn't have physical scars, the effect of cyberbullying still leaves a devastating mark.
I was cyberbullied, called fat, called all these names because on statuses things are said that shouldn't have been said, and it's really hard to read that status, know it's about you, and then read all the comments and know that they're all about you and that you go to school with these kids and then everyone thinks so bad about you, when you do so much for school.
When it comes to cyberbullying, because it's so easy for kids to bully with the unlimited access that they have to digital devices, with the lack of accountability that they're held to. The difference is that a victim today is slapped over and over and over, and they can't get peace. It's not victimized once, it's victimized 100 times over. Mary is referring to the enormous effect of bystanders. Bystanders are those who either do nothing or join in on the harassment. With cyberbullying, the number of bystanders has the potential to reach into the hundreds of thousands. Bystanders often become bullies themselves, forwarding or amplifying the bully's hateful message or chiming in with their own. In the physical world, someone says you're a jerk, they say it to your face. You can respond. In the online world, kids can be anonymous. You don't know always who's harassing you. Saying to someone online, you're a jerk, it's not just perpetrator to victim, it's perpetrator to victim and hundreds of other people.
If you think about that anonymity component, people will say and do things anonymously that they would never say and do to somebody's face. So that really opens up the potential pool of cyberbullies.
With secured anonymity, cyberbullies are indirectly aggressive, which some experts say is common to one particular group.
At least based on the data that Sue and I have looked at, it's more of a girl thing. And that really fits with what we know about direct and indirect types of aggression. And cyberbullying is considered to be an indirect types of aggression.
I don't have anyone at home to talk to anymore. And it's really hard because it's still going to this day. Anonymity provides,
it affords behavior that would never be tolerated offline. Anonymity gives kids courage behind the keyboard. Anonymity allows kids to get away things that they'd never think of doing otherwise. This false courage has led to more than just hurt feelings, stress, or problems at school. As Tina Meyer knows all too well, the results can be far more grave.
Well, everyday life was pretty interesting. I had 2 daughters, and the girls both went to public school. Megan was a type of kid who kept you on your toes. She was diagnosed with depression and attention deficit disorder in 3rd grade. It was a busy lifestyle, but it was good. My girls were great. We did a lot of things, family vacations. Her dad and I decided to switch her to a private school for 8th grade. And in between that 7th and 8th grade summer, Megan started working out. She joined the volleyball team of the new school, started making new friends. She noticed after about 3 weeks in that everybody had a MySpace. And I wasn't too thrilled with the MySpace. And the rules were that I had her password to her account. Megan did not have her password to her MySpace.
Tina explains that Megan immediately began uploading photos to her MySpace page and connecting with friends from school. She was very happy, especially when she met Josh.
It was about 3 weeks in, and she received a friend request from a boy named Josh Evans. And the friend request would come in, and it would show a picture and the name. Megan called me over to the computer excited, Mom, come look at this. I went and I looked, and I said, okay, who is that? And she said, I don't know, Mom, he's hot. I said, well, Megan, I'm great. You think he's cute and all, but how do you know him? And she goes, Mom, I don't. He's hot. Please let me at him. And I did let her at him.
Like a typical teenage romance, Megan and Josh grew to be close over the next several weeks. However, as Megan's 14th birthday approached, things changed.
She got a message from Josh that said, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. You're not a nice person. And Megan was confused. She was Like, where is this coming from? What the heck? So she responded, what are you talking about? Where'd you get this from? But there was no response. I said, listen, Meg, it's late. It's time to go to bed. You can deal with this tomorrow. The second we get home, she instantly wants to get on MySpace. She wants to know, what did Josh have to say? And the message from Josh the night before was, you heard me. No one likes you. No one wants to be friends with you anymore. So about a half an hour later, I called to check on her, and she was sobbing to the point, I could hardly understand what she was saying. She said, Mom, they're being horrible. I can't even explain it to you. You're going to have to come home and see it for yourself.
When Tina reached home, she saw that Josh had recruited 2 other girls in the attack. They simultaneously sent vicious messages about Megan to all her friends.
There were things like, you're a fat no one would ever go out with you. You're nasty. You're disgusting. It was devastating to her.
Panicked, embarrassed beyond belief, and crying, Megan took off upstairs to her room.
Probably 20 minutes went by, and I just got an absolute horrible feeling. I don't know how else to describe it, throughout my whole body. And I took off running upstairs to Megan's room. I opened her door, and I found her hanging in her closet. There's not even words to describe the absolute horror, petrifying, shock. I ran and grabbed her and started screaming. But I couldn't get her down. Her dad, Ron, ran up the stairs, started grabbing her down, and I ran and got a knife. Allison, our neighbors down the street that were like our family friends, we screamed to her to go get Blaine. And he grew up with Megan. He was 17 years old and a lifeguard, and he knew CPR.
I ran down there, and she was laying on the ground, and then I remember the closet being open and like just the whole shelving unit just ripped out. And she was just laying there, and then and Ron was just giving her CPR, and then that's when I just kind of took over until the paramedics came.
The first few minutes of seeing her after she was hooked up with everything, even to this day, devastating. The doctors then came out and told us, really, it doesn't look good. I think I fell on the floor, thinking there's no possible way this is happening. They turned the machines off, and we held her when she passed away. And you give birth to your children, and you have all of these dreams, and it's gone. In a flash. There's nothing you can do. As parents, we're so worried about protecting our kids, and we can always fix things, and I couldn't fix this. For weeks, I would search for Josh Evans. I would search for his pictures. I would search for anything, any friends' pages, anything, because I wanted to know, who was this person?
Josh's harsh words had a tremendous impact on Megan, but he was nowhere to be found. Until one day when a neighbor, Michelle Mulford, told Tina they needed to meet face to face. Tina quickly arranged the meeting.
And at this meeting, it was in a circle in a counselor's office, and there was probably 8 or 9 people there. We walked in, and the first things out of my mouth were, so tell me Josh Evans was a fake, right? He wasn't real? And Michelle looked at me and shook her head yes. We were informed that Josh Evans was actually the neighbor down the street, Lori Drew, who was 46 years old. Her 13-year-old daughter, Sarah Drew, who had been friends with Megan since the 4th grade, and Ashley Grills, who was 18 years old, who did some part-time work for Lori out of her house. Those 3 were Josh the entire time. They were hoping the Drews would come forward. Unfortunately, they never did. They lived 4 houses down the street. I wanted to destroy them. They did all of those things. It's pretty sick and twisted.
It's assumed that Lori Drew had arranged the entire hoax in an attempt at gaining Megan's confidence and learning what Megan felt about her daughter.
When I first heard about the Megan Myers story, I was very saddened to hear that, okay, we've got this girl and she's got all sorts of potential, and then we've got these activities being done against her by someone posing as a child who's actually an adult. I mean, how messed up is that? That's so problematic in many sorts of ways. And then you think about this girl, and how come we didn't have some sort of social support for her? How come we didn't have institutions in society, whether it was the school or whether it was houses of worship or whether it was mentors in the community, just, coming to her support and, being there in order to serve as someone who she's able to say, look, I am loved, and I don't need to take in or internalize these words of harm coming from another person. Because what I'm finding is they feel alone, and they feel lonely, and they feel desperate for attention and affection and validation and affirmation. And so they're gravitating online, and they're using text messaging all hours of the day, and they're using social networking sites and instant message programs all hours of the day, because they need people to tell them that, look, I'm okay, I'm all right, I'm loved, I'm beautiful.
A disturbing way that kids are seeking attention is sexting. Sexting is the act of sending sexually explicit messages or images between mobile devices and social networks. It's not only a prominent form of cyberbullying, but it further enables cyberbullies, giving them ammunition.
Sexting, oh yes. Yes, my students love to talk about sexting.
What do they talk about?
Oh.
And like in my school that I was just in, a girl sent a picture to her boyfriend, okay? Her boyfriend sent it to his homeboy, and the homeboy ended up sending it to this girl because she got it or something like that. And then the girl took her picture that she had and made it into a forward text and everything. So, and then sent it around the whole school, and everybody was like, she didn't even know people had this her picture and had this forward talking about all this crazy stuff that she has, and because it was one of those kind of pictures, and she was like, oh my gosh, and everybody's laughing at her, and she felt embarrassed, and she felt she was being bullied,
Has anyone asked you to send naked images?
I've been asked before, but I've not done it. I swear.
But I will tell you that young people have told us in the surveys that we've done that what they're doing might negatively impact where they go to school, or it might negatively have an effect on a job interview 10 years from now. But I think too many young people still think this magic Teflon of it won't happen to me.
Have you ever sent a picture of yourself to a girl?
Yeah.
Do you feel worried about it?
Not really.
40% of young people tell us that they are sharing these nude or semi-nude images with people that it's not intended for. So even if you think it's private, it's not.
Have you ever had a sex sent to you?
Yeah.
Did you show it to anyone?
I did, yeah.
Why?
Well, they just were like, what's she look like? And I was like, all right, hold on. And then I pulled out my phone, I showed them, and then they're like, damn. So
I think most of them just want the boy to love them.
Not even to love, just they want to get attention. Girls love attention.
I used to talk about it like trophies, like what girls have you been with, what girls have you been with, and you just show them a picture and be like, yeah, that's what you got, look at this.
Have you ever asked a guy to send a picture of his penis?
Yes, I have.
Why?
Because I don't, it wasn't just because.
A common thing, a hot thing that's done amongst teens.
Do you feel like you jeopardized his future?
I feel like no, because I'm not gonna. Well, oh yeah, because everybody did see it, but I didn't send it around. I deleted it. I didn't want my parents to see a picture of a thing in my phone. So I was like.
They're so innocent. They're so immature.
Did you feel guilty for even asking him?
Yeah, I did, because I was like, well, yeah, but I didn't force him to send it. I asked him for a picture of his and he didn't. His reply, instead of saying yes or no, was a picture.
It's very hard for them to understand it's not a game. It's very, very serious. Hope made a mistake and took a nude photo of herself. But of course she had a crush on one of the boys sending these pictures, thinking that the person they're sending them to would be the only person that would ever see them. But that is a lie. The pictures are forwarded. Push the button. not even knowing who they sent it to. The second photo was taken on a cell phone of one of the girls in the group. Her explanation was, "Mom, we were scared. They wouldn't stop calling." She said, "Mom, I just did it to get it over with, so they would leave us alone." And it became apparent to her whole school, along with at least 6 other schools in the area. There's not much said about the effects of it afterwards. Computer, cell phones. She suffered a lot of ridicule. Hope was suspended for the first week of the new school year. I noticed there was a change in her mood. She said, "Mom, I had a really bad day at school, and some boys were sitting at my table at lunch. They wouldn't get up, and they were calling me whore and slut and making fun of me." She said, "I tried to fight back and tried to tell them to stop. It ended up being a yelling match, and I lost it," she said. There was a lot of cyberbullying going on that I had no knowledge of, that there were 5 days of very visual, obvious bullying, violence. Hope would sit in a classroom to hear name calling. "Here comes the slut. Here comes the whore." Hope spent her week of school having to be corralled by her friends, moving from one class to the other class to avoid being shoved into lockers and spit on and called names. Hope committed suicide. It was a Friday. Hope was a typical, beautiful, average American girl. What happened to her can happen to anybody's child.
Now that the same is true for cyberbullying, some might wonder how the schools are prepared to handle it. Do you guys think that cyberbullying is a serious issue?
Yeah, definitely.
It's like the leading cause of teen suicide.
Cyberbullying, it's one of our new enemies. One of the enemies at schools we have a very difficult time putting our fingers on because much of it doesn't happen when they're in school. These are issues that happen outside of our walls.
Do you think that schools are doing enough to address cyberbullying?
No. They don't even talk about it or anything. I mean,
I'm most afraid of kids thinking that we are not listening. I believe that once it becomes something that we are aware of, if we do not address it, notice I said address it, not solve it, because to solve it, we need some other stakeholders. We need parents involved. We might need reports from teachers. We will definitely need involvement from law enforcement. Unfortunately, a lot of law enforcement requires for someone to be hurt first or killed first before they take action.
When they hear about these things that happen to other kids, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that is really horrible." But then they go right back to doing whatever they want to do.
You can't really
understand it fully unless you experience
They
that.
know about it, but people don't take it seriously enough, and they don't take care of their self enough on the internet.
For us to even think that certain dollars could be set aside to address cyberbullying, I'm going to say that that's going to be a far reach.
also with the schools and everything, they constantly tell you, oh, be careful what you post, be careful what you say and everything, but they don't really tell you what will happen if you're not careful.
I think it's a little unfair to say that it is our issue to deal with. Our filter system does not allow kids to even check email. So the attacks or the strong statements that kids are putting across the airwaves is not beginning in schools.
What are your thoughts on sexting?
Sexting.
Bad.
Very bad.
Really bad. That's
it could end you in so much trouble.
That's the worst thing that you can do.
Anytime you say sex anything in schools, especially these days, scary red flags go up because it's difficult to anticipate how other folks are going to interpret that kind of teaching.
I think that probably sending pictures is the worst thing you could do.
Yeah, and usually girls like that do have low self-esteem, so then they are more prone to getting cyberbullied later on too because of that.
If someone were to send an inappropriate picture to someone else, that person could forward it to anyone, and
he has power
pictures
over
of
her because he can manipulate her with those pictures, and he can get her to do anything with those pictures by threatening her with them.
The feelings that you get from that everyone and anyone could have that picture of you, is just like, it makes you, like, your stomach just turns inside of you. That's what causes these, like, issues with suicide and depression.
I think that for something like cyberbullying, we need to get kids much more empowered and much more involved. I believe that that's really going to be the only way that we build some trust in that, one, that they're not alone, and two, that the adults are listening and ready to take action.
There seems to be a disconnect between what students are experiencing and what the schools are able to address. Principal Rodriguez says that most of the cyberbullying happens outside of school, which means parents need to be more involved. What he said next was very concerning.
And I think what makes it even worse is that since this is an emotional piece that kids are dealing with, many kids don't even share.
If cyberbullying is happening outside of school and is in the jurisdiction of the parents, what are they to do when most of the cyberbullying goes on below their radar?
Cyberbullying is a very difficult problem to deal with because our victims don't tell us.
The adults, a lot of times, even when you talk to them, a lot of times they don't really take it seriously too. And also, sometimes they just don't feel like listening. And then sometimes the child doesn't want to go to them because they're scared the adult will overreact completely.
When I talk to young people, and this is literally from little kids in elementary school up through high school, they tell me exactly the same thing. And what they tell me is, I don't want to talk to the adults because they don't know what's going on. They're going to overreact, and then they're going to take away my stuff.
Say I'm a parent and I want to monitor my kids on the phone and on the web. What do you guys think about that?
I do think it's necessary, but then I don't. If you really trust your child and you know that they're not doing the things you see on the television about the cyberbullying and the this and the that, I think that there's no need for you to watch them.
I have these conversations with parents, and I have the conversations with kids, and two things that come up are basically variations on that same comment. Number one, what about my privacy?
If my mom told me she's monitoring my thing once a month, I'm like, okay, this whole month, I'm gonna see what day she's monitoring, and then like a week before then, deleting everything.
Number two is, I don't want to jump into my kids' privacy. And my reaction to that is, you don't have to be in their business every day, looking at every single email, every single text, reading everything that's posted, and so on and so forth. But by the same token, you are mom and dad. And it's mom and dad's job to protect you, to keep you safe.
Firsthand, I know the type of stuff that, happens on Facebook, but, my mom doesn't because she never had a Facebook. It's a whole different generation, gap. But if I had a daughter, I'd definitely monitor it. Most definitely.
No. Had I known what was on those texts, had I known what was on Facebook or YouTube, and seen and been aware or acknowledged it, I would have taken action immediately. I would have done anything for my daughter. She could dance. She was a leader. She was a good student. She loved the Lord. She loved her parents. She was the perfect child. Johanna was so convincing that she was able to convince me that she was okay. And I got the call from my former spouse, and she said, Johanna's dead. I said, what? I said, what? And he says, Johanna's dead. She's dead. She's gone. And I just went crazy. I started screaming and crying. And it was death by hanging. She hung herself. It was the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. And so they had grief counselors there, and my brother-in-law was there. They were praying over, and I couldn't believe my baby was gone. I just talked to her the night before. See, I didn't know. Parents, I don't think, are aware of because they're so busy trying to keep up with the bills and prepare for the next day. And there's a subculture of YouTube, MySpace, Facebook, texting. And when the investigator came to my house, because I had some questions, and she had showed me some of the stuff that she had written, I had no idea.
John feels responsible for his daughter's death. Even those parents that stay on top of their children's online activities aren't able to prevent tragedy. Remember Tina Meyer? She openly communicated with her daughter Megan, setting expectations, and even monitored her messages. But once the bullies showed their true colors, damage was done. Although kids are experiencing a spectrum of pain over what's happening to them online, and in the worst cases, death, no one we've talked to has managed to come up with a solution. So when a child is cyberbullied, if they don't keep it to themselves, they tell their parents, who might try to take their technology away or monitor their kids with software. But that's not enough to stop the cyberbullying. So they reach out to the schools. The schools aren't sure how to handle it, so they toss the problem back to the parents. Then the parents take the natural next step. They pick up the phone and call an attorney, looking for the legal system for answers.
And we know that the prosecutor and the police, they're unable to prosecute all these crimes. By volume, there's just far too many of them.
But the thing about a civil lawsuit is, speaking from someone who sues, that's what I do, you know, there are very few, even if you win and get a judgment and you try to collect, there are all different ways for individuals, if there's no insurance now, to get away from paying. And the ultimate is file bankruptcy. 9 times out of 10, file bankruptcy will wipe out a civil judgment. So what do you have at the end of the day? You spend 2 years, 80 grand, trying to sue someone civilly for a cyberbullying issue. The prosecution wouldn't take the case. The civil lawyer is the last hope. You go there and you get a verdict, and you get $300,000 verdict. You're happy. Your client, the victim, is satisfied, and you go to collect it. What are you going to get? A piece of paper. That's it. Useless. It's an exercise in potentially being re-victimized.
The danger behind sexting is not only in terms of the reputation of the potential victim, but it's the idea that you can send something, send a message, and that message could then be the basis for a criminal filing for soliciting sex with a minor. It could be disseminating child porn.
How old's your friend?
13.
And he's sexting? How?
His girlfriend sent him a picture of something and said something his bad. He started showing his neighborhood and stuff.
Anybody can send whatever message to any adult that they want to. Where it becomes criminal is where that message is unwanted, or whether messages that were intended for one person are then disseminated to large groups of people, or of course if there's children involved.
How old is his girlfriend?
14.
Did he show you? What did you say to him?
That's nasty.
That's one of the big issues, is that if two minors are sending pictures to each other, you have two victims and two perpetrators, and out of judicial economy and interest of justice, a prosecutor wouldn't file that case, but technically you have two people who are committing or could be committing a crime.
Do you know that's illegal?
Illegal? Yeah.
It's child porn.
Yeah.
And your friends know that?
Yeah.
And they still do it?
Yeah. Once the guys get the picture, it's like open game for everybody. Because then their friends like expect to see the pictures and stuff, so
So there's peer pressure for them to show their friends the picture?
Yeah.
They taught us about going online and talk and being
Chat
careful that
rooms and stuff like that.
Careful to be like with older men pretending to be younger. But I think what they didn't understand is that, yeah, that was happening, but now they didn't expect that kids our age would do the same kind of things to us and hurt us even more.
A lot of schools don't even know about this stuff.
There's a lot of states that seem to have come out hitting hard on the sexting, but when it actually comes to the actual investigation, prosecution, and therefore the conviction of these kids with sexting, but I have not heard of a single case across the country where any kid has actually been convicted of a sex crime as a result of a sext that was sent.
If lawyers are having trouble prosecuting, does that mean we need new laws?
You know, the internet has opened up our world to our children, but it's also opened up our children to the world. So it's really important that we make sure that people learn how to keep children safe. That's why I introduced the AWARE Act at the federal level, legislation that would create internet safety programs and fund them.
Cyberbullying expert Samir Hinduja works with both victims and bullies and has a different opinion.
I'm actually not in support of a federal law to support cyberbullying because I believe that each state should look at this issue and see what's going on in its various school districts on an individual type basis. Because honestly, in some states, in some regions, it might not be as huge of a problem as it is in others.
There are varying approaches that you can take. There are some that believe that punishment is the right approach. I think because you have First Amendment concerns, free speech concerns, we do have to be very careful about limiting communication.
I think that one tack that a lot of individuals are taking, such as Tina Meyer, the mother of Megan Meyer, is to talk to politicians and talk to legislators and talk to the powers that be in order to make, decisions as to laws or policies that can be passed in order to deter cyberbullying and other forms of teen technology misuse. My only concern is that most of the youth that we know are not going to be deterred just because we have a law or policy in place.
Most parents don't know that there's the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act that's been around since 1991, and it makes it against the law for any website operator to allow a child under the age of 13 to join that site without getting parental consent. The Federal Trade Commission, who's behind the law, I believe could step up their education and enforcement efforts, because every day that a child under the age of 12 joins under the age of 13 joins a mainstream social network, it's a slap in the face to the law. Now, we talk about wanting to use laws to protect cyberbullying. If we can't carry out a basic one like that's been around for 10 years, I'm concerned.
But what does it take for a police officer to respond to a cyberbullying call? Chicago, Illinois, often recognized for being the birthplace for a majority of today's street gangs, is the home of Cook County Jail, the largest single county jail in the United States of America. Sheriff Dart oversees this operation and has his hands on the happenings related to crime in Chicago. With all this going on, it may be hard to pay attention to cyberbullying.
You can imagine, once again, when you have a lot of very serious offenses going on, if you get a call to your police department saying, my son or daughter is being targeted via the internet, you can see where someone who's overwhelmed with homicides and rapes might sit there and say, well, mom or dad, just handle it. Law enforcement frequently is reactive, not proactive. But I'll tell you one thing that I have always found to be horribly effective in getting people's attention: go to the media. The media loves to talk about stories that are human interest involved, that have someone who's clearly being victimized.
Most people would rather have a rapist in jail than a cyberbully. But if the police are too busy to take a call, is the last resort really to call the media? Samir notes that although cyberbullying laws are a sign of progress, they won't have an effect on the decisions that children make.
If someone wants to give you grief, they're not going to think, oh, I remember that my state just passed this law and prescribed this penalty or punishment against this behavior last year, so no, I don't think I'm going to do it. No, if the opportunity is presented to themselves, then they're probably just going to respond by emotions and act out.
One of the things that we know about traditional bullying is that most of those kids who bully learn it from their parents. They pick up some type of bullying behavior from their parents. So often what we found in the research is that boys who were bullying other boys were often being bullied by their parents, and sometimes in the form of abuse.
Have you ever been a bully?
Yes.
Why? Why were you bullying people?
Because of the problems that I had at home myself.
So we used to go and drag their parents into the school and say, hey, your kid's a bully, and we found out that that was sort of the opposite thing that we should be doing, because those kids were getting knocked around at home, and when they came to school, they were acting out that behavior on their classmates.
You know, I was going through a lot of abuse, you know, physically, emotionally, and I needed somebody. If I can talk to anybody, then I had to take the anger out on somebody.
Although kids are killing themselves over what happens to them online, no one we've talked to has come up with a solution. So when a child is being cyberbullied, if they don't keep it to themselves, they tell their parents, who might try to take the technology away or monitor their kids with software. But that's still not enough to stop the cyberbullying. So the parents reach out to the school. The schools aren't sure how to handle it, so they toss the problem back to the parents, who reach out to lawyers, who might take the case or might not. But if they take the case, it won't stick in criminal court. So the parents end up in civil court. And if by chance they win the case, they might get money or they might get nothing, getting re-victimized and bled dry by legal fees. So instead of reaching out to the lawyer, the parents reach out to the police, who can hardly take their call. So then it falls back on to the parents. And who knows how long it would take for the parents to get in contact with the social network, to get the cyberbullying content removed, or chase down a kid who is forwarding a trophy picture of their child's naked body. So we've got one big mess of roadblocks, where both the child and the parent become victimized and re-victimized. It's becoming more and more apparent that this problem is evolving beyond our conventional means of containment. Schools, social sites, laws, law enforcement, and to some extent, even the parents don't seem to be the answer. No conventional answers. Maybe it's time to try something unconventional.
Well, I think one of the things that makes people not want to help out is, you know, they feel bad for the person that's getting cyberbullied, but then they think, you know, oh, if I try to help out, I might be picked on too, and I don't want to feel like that person. If you turn the tables on the people that are bullying, and you outnumber them, you know, you have a bunch of people commenting saying, knock it off, you know, like, this isn't cool, this is not funny, then they're the ones that feel isolated. They're the ones that won't want to do it again. They feel like the person that was originally being bullied. I've never seen any bully recover from that and keep doing it. Every single time I've seen it just end there, and it never happens again.
Well, I agree that it would be nice to be able to point the finger because it's a huge problem. But I don't think pointing the finger short term or even long term is going to solve the problem. Because ultimately we need to take the fingers and point it back at ourselves. Whether, you know, we're the parent that's not involved, or whether we're the young person that's doing the bullying, or the one person that's standing back and not doing something when they see someone becoming a victim.
Bystanders have a humongous role to play. And I think that when it comes to these education and awareness campaigns, they should be in large part directed towards bystanders, because maybe you aren't the victim or the target, and maybe you're not the offender, but I promise you, you talk to any teenager, and yes, they've seen this happen at their school, amongst people that they know, amongst maybe even their best friends. And I know when I was being bullied in middle school, I would have loved for someone to have stepped up, maybe a friend, and said, look, you know, Samir's really struggling, you know, you gotta just check in on him and make sure he's doing okay, and kind of say something encouraging to him. Because I felt completely paralyzed, and I didn't know who to turn to whatsoever.
I don't have anyone at home to talk to anymore, and it's really hard because it's still going to this day.
good number of bystanders are hesitant when it comes to stepping up for what's right and talking to the bully because, of course, they don't want to be the next person who's targeted. But I would love to see more and more of that because that is essential. I think bystanders absolutely can be heroes because they're coming to the rescue of their friends.
The courage of the bystander seems to be at the heart of this issue, and it makes sense. If kids are on the front lines of this issue, then that's where the education and the efforts need to be placed.
And you think about the golden rule, and you think about all these different sorts of guiding principles that we've absorbed and internalized all these years.
What is the golden rule?
The golden rule is just, doing unto others as they would have you do unto you.
There is a bullying summit at the White House.
Thank you. Preventing bullying isn't just important to us as President and First Lady, it's important for us as parents. I want to thank you for being part of what's a growing movement, led by young people themselves, to put a stop to bullying, whether it take place in school or it's taking place online.
Tina Meyer is invited, and a side meeting is held by Facebook. Can you tell us what your goal was in attending the conference?
Well, I think that we want to make sure that we're working on our safety center that's going to do, I think, a really great job of providing more resources for people who find themselves in this circumstance.
Awareness is spreading.
This problem is not confined to K-12 youth. It affects our whole society.
I do this because I want real voices. I want average voices to be heard. And I do this because it's not just about the experts. It really is about the young men and young women who are suffering through this right now.
And while the battle is far from being won,
this is pathetic that you have this type of issue, children that are dying, taking their own lives over cyberbullying, and there are, 60, 70 people here tonight? This is an absolute shame, and it needs to go to the parents first.
People across the country are educating each other about the reality of this virtual world.
Parents need to have two approaches. They need to understand what their kids are doing online, but they also need to know their limitations. You're not going to know everything that your kids are doing online.
It would be nice to be able to blame, some big company somewhere. It's us as a society that needs to step up.
Even some of the media are getting it right.
We wanted to know what the issues were, what the world issues were that were worrying young people. And of those issues, what were the issues where they felt if they had some advice or help, they could make a difference? And that's where we got the advice not to focus so much on the kid who's been bullied or even the kid who's doing the bullying, but that vast majority of children who watch bullying happen, they know it's wrong, but they're not quite sure what to do to stop it.
And only by the hands of time, victimized parents and children try to heal and move forward. They move forward with tenacity. They move forward with hope.
May the God of hope fill you with joy and peace by the power of the Holy Spirit.
They move forward with renewed spirits.
It's going to take a while to get everybody on board, but I think America is awake now. People around the world are awake now, realizing that this is something that's very important and we have to keep working on it.
They ask one thing: wake up, get aware, get involved. Start in your own home, community, church, and social group. Teach your child empathy, advocate empathy in others, and do the most important thing: never be a bystander. There are ways to start and places to begin. And the people in this film would like you to stand up to cyberbullying by starting now.
ocean breeze at sunset said it held the answers in the wind. While love and loss all swirled around her, she let the water wash her sins. She said, you took too much from me,